Now, Brazil manager Carlo Ancelotti has named his 26-man squad for the upcoming World Cup as he attempts to lead the Seleção to their 6th World Cup.
The football world has a massive problem, and it's not the problem you think it is. For the last 20 years, everyone grew comfortable watching Brazil fail. We got used to the narrative, endless flair, dazzling stepovers, but ultimately, a team that falls apart the second a well-structured European side decides to turn the game into a chess match. 5 World Cups, 76 wins in 114 matches. The only nation on earth to grace every single edition of the tournament. Let's be completely honest with ourselves. Most football fans in the modern era didn't just fall in love with the game, they fell in love with Brazil. The rhythm, the smiles, the sheer audacity of the yellow shirt. It was an absolute guarantee of pure, unadulterated entertainment. Genius moments that simply could not be engineered anywhere else on earth. Think Roberto Carlos, that free kick. A strike so impossible it made tactics feel utterly irrelevant. That was the myth of the Seleção. But look closely at this 2026 squad because something fundamental has shifted. For the first time in an entire generation, Brazil isn't just terrifying when they press forward. They look cold. They look balanced through the middle, and they finally look like they understand exactly what modern tournament football demands. This isn't a team trying to play beautiful art for your entertainment anymore. They are transforming into something smarter, colder, and drastically harder to beat. And that is exactly why the rest of the world should be absolutely terrified. To understand why this shift is so revolutionary, we have to look at the curse of their own history. Brazil didn't just participate in the World Cup, they historically dictated what the tournament felt like. Before tactics became lines on a graphic, before pressing triggers became standard football language, Brazil operated on pure imagination. The first golden era built an untouchable legacy. The 1970 team didn't just lift a trophy, they fundamentally altered how humanity imagined the sport. When Carlos Alberto swept home that flowing team move against Italy, it didn't look like an intricate tactical system. It looked completely, beautifully inevitable. Then came 1994 with Romario's lethal instinct, and finally 2002, the last truly complete Brazilian side to touch gold. Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Rivaldo, Cafu, Roberto Carlos. That team had immense star power, but people forget they had an elite structural foundation. Gilberto Silva anchored the spaces. Cafu and Carlos provided hyper-aggressive width. Ronaldo finished everything. It was a perfectly functioning machine. But that's exactly where the rot set in. Brazil never stopped producing world-class individuals. But the structure underneath began to erode. The first massive warning arrived in 2006. On paper, it looked like a fantasy squad built with unlimited budget restrictions. But on the pitch, Zinedine Zidane completely controlled the rhythm. France strangled the space. Thierry Henry hit the winner, and a star-studded Brazil had absolutely no tactical answers. Modern tournament football was evolving, demanding compactness, emotional discipline, and pressing resistance. Brazil had the stars, but they no longer held the answers. And then came 2014, the night the very identity of Brazilian football cracked in front of the entire world. The 7-1 humiliation against Germany wasn't just a tactical defeat, it was a total emotional collapse. Without Neymar and Thiago Silva, the country of rhythm looked utterly frantic. The side that used to make opponents chase ghosts was completely dismantled by a German machine that thought faster, moved cleaner, and kept its absolute composure under pressure. History repeated itself in 2018 against Belgium's devastating transitions. And it happened again in 2022 against Croatia. Neymar produced a moment of pure magic in extra time that should have defined his legacy. But Croatia's veteran midfield Modric, Brozovic, Kovacic simply refused to panic. They controlled the emotional temperature, dragged Brazil into deep water, equalized in the 117th minute, and executed them on penalties. Whenever the game became deeply uncomfortable, Brazil ran out of answers. Enter the man hired to completely rewrite the script, Carlo Ancelotti. Brazil didn't bring in the legendary Italian because they wanted more flair, more noise, or more media hype. They hired him for one specific reason: control. For a federation rooted in fierce national pride, turning to a foreign manager is a massive historic concession. It is an open admission that their problem was never a lack of talent, it was a critical lack of balance. He didn't walk into a squad brimming with confidence either. He inherited a side that had been bruised 4-1 by Argentina under Dorival Jr., a group desperately crying out for emotional stability rather than a tactical overhaul. Look at the early signs of his tenure. A grinding 0-0 draw in the high altitude of Ecuador. A razor-thin 1-0 victory over Paraguay with a gritty finish from Matheus Cunha. It wasn't samba, it wasn't beautiful. But it was classic tournament football, learning how to suffer, how to adjust, and how to survive. Ancelotti's supreme genius has never been about forcing a rigid, unyielding philosophy onto his players. At Milan, he engineered narrow midfield diamonds. At Chelsea, he unleashed a ruthless 4-3-3 to seal a Premier League double. At Real Madrid, he constantly morphed his system around the exact profiles at his disposal. For Brazil, this is everything. This squad doesn't need a coach to trap its creative geniuses inside a tactical cage. It needs a manager who gives them clear, unyielding defensive rules without suffocating their natural footballing instincts. As Ancelotti famously summarized his own philosophy, structure without the ball, absolute freedom with it. Now let's look at the terrifying tools he has to deploy. It all starts with Vinicius Jr. entering his absolute prime. Vinicius is one of the most destructive open space weapons in modern football history. He isn't dangerous because he stands out wide waiting for the ball to arrive. He is lethal because the moment a game fractures, he turns vacant space into an existential crisis for opposing defenders. Ancelotti already built the perfect environment for him to become a Champions League match winner in Madrid. Now he's seamlessly porting that blueprint directly over to the national team. On the opposite flank, Rafinha introduces an entirely different flavor of danger. His tactical education under Hansi Flick at Barcelona has made him incredibly sharp without stripping away his native directness. He presses relentlessly, hunts the far post, dominates set pieces, and injects sheer physical intensity the second Brazil lose possession. Ancelotti doesn't want luxury forwards who refuse to work. He demands elite runners who can recover, press, and still ruthlessly punish teams on the counter. Rafinha fits that mold flawlessly. Then, there is the Neymar equation. This is where things get fascinating. As Brazil's all-time leading scorer with 79 goals, he's no longer being selected out of pure sentiment or historical hype. He is being picked entirely for his current continuity and physical condition. Neymar himself completely brushed aside his fitness critics, but his operational role must change. Brazil can no longer be a team that panics, gives Neymar the ball, and prays for a miracle. Under Ancelotti, he is the ultimate connector. He drops between the lines, manipulates the tempo, releases Vinicius early, and unlocks low blocks. He is no longer the entire system. He is simply the ultimate luxury piece inside it. And the depth behind them is genuinely ridiculous. Look at the data points from across Europe this season. Endrick arrives as the ultimate wildcard after a highly responsible loan spell at Lyon, racking up 5 goals and 7 assists from 14 starts against physical French defenders. Matheus Cunha, providing elite intelligence between the lines, hitting 10 goals and 2 assists for Manchester United while dropping deep to connect transitions at breakneck speed. Gabriel Martinelli, bringing vertical running, stretching lines, and turning defensive recoveries into instant counterattacks. Igor Thiago, the true penalty box reference, hammering home 19 goals for Brentford, the highest single-season scoring total for a Brazilian in Premier League history. Ryan and Luis Henrique, offering raw, direct running and elite ball-carrying power whenever the rhythm needs a total shakeup. But as terrifying as that attack is, it's not even the main reason why Brazil is built to win this tournament. The real secret to winning a World Cup doesn't live in the forward line, it lives in the spine. The goalkeeper, the center backs, the deep-lying midfielders, the executioners who keep your team alive when the game gets chaotic and ugly. Alisson provides the calmest pair of hands in football, letting the defensive line play incredibly high because of his world-class sweeping ability. But right in front of him sits Gabriel Magalhaes. Gabriel arrives fresh off a historic record-breaking Premier League title charge with Arsenal, where he was the absolute anchor of the league's best defense. He defends forward, relishes physical contact, dominates aerially, and gives Brazil an immense threat on offensive set pieces. Partnering him is Marquinhos, the gold standard of experience, boasting over 500 appearances for PSG and 11 League One titles. Luis Enrique publicly hailed his immense leadership, and the partnership with Gabriel is pure harmony. Gabriel provides raw, unfiltered power. Marquinhos brings elite reading of the game. One attacks the duel, the other manages the defensive line. Directly in front of them sits Casemiro. He may not have the legs to cover every blade of grass like his younger days, but under Ancelotti, the man who utilized him perfectly at Real Madrid, he doesn't need to. He is there to protect the zone, clean up second balls, win aerial battles, and provide ironclad emotional discipline when the pressure mounts. And right next to him is the motor, Bruno Guimaraes. Aggressive, press-resistant, and technically pristine. He was named Newcastle's Undisputed Player of the Year after a staggering season, leading them with 9 goals and 8 assists from midfield. He is a serious elite progressive engine, with Lucas Paquetá offering creative links and Fabinho available to totally lock down games from the bench. Brazil finally has tactical answers for every single state of play. But here is where the ultimate tension lies. Brazil finally has every single ingredient required to dominate a modern tournament. But ingredients are not the same thing as chemistry. At club level, Vinicius relies on Madrid's automated structure. Rafinha depends on Barcelona's rigid positional support. Gabriel is shielded by Arsenal's collective machine. When they fly across the world to assemble for the national team, those club relationships don't automatically copy and paste. If the gaps between the midfield and the attack grow too massive, the system collapses. If the fullbacks push too high at the wrong moment, Gabriel and Marquinhos are left completely exposed. We have seen this tragedy play out before. We saw Croatia systematically exploit this exact flaw in 2022 by slowing the game down to a snail's pace and starving Brazil of oxygen. Ancelotti's real task isn't simply selecting the most famous names from a team sheet. His job is connecting them into a single, cohesive, living organism. And that is exactly why this specific team feels completely different. They aren't trying to recreate the romantic ghost of 1970. They aren't relying on Neymar to save the day, or waiting around for a flash of individual magic. The real terror of this 2026 Brazil team is that they finally possess an unbreakable spine capable of supporting their brightest stars. Alisson in goal, Gabriel and Marquinhos commanding the box, Casemiro and Bruno dictating the middle, and Carlo Ancelotti pulling the strings. Brazil might not be the flashiest, most entertaining team to watch in this tournament, but for the first time in 20 years, they finally know exactly what kind of team they need to be to conquer the world.